Good afternoon and welcome to the Polk County School Board's work session regarding our superintendent search. And I would like to take a moment to say thank you again to FSBA for the kindness of providing masks to the district. We very much appreciate your generosity and we'll be distributing those accordingly. Board members, before we get started, I wanted to announce a couple dates. After reviewing the superintendent's timeline that we've put together with FSBA and reviewing our work session agendas going forward in 2021, I have two changes that we need to make. And Susan will certainly take care of that for each of us, but I just wanted to publicly announce it. So on January 12th, 2021, we have a work session scheduled at 9 a.m. and we're going to change that to 1 p.m. because we need to follow that up with a board meeting for our superintendent search. You can check your timeline and see that. Secondly, on April the 13th, 2021, there is a work session scheduled at 9 o'clock. And once again, we'd like to go ahead and move that from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. so that we can follow that work session up with a board meeting that evening. Those are, which date was it? Okay, those were January the 12th. Our work session will be now at 1 p.m. And on April 13th, our work session will now be at 1 p.m. And I've already discussed this with Superintendent Byrd and staff, and they're going to make those appropriate changes going forward so that we're not here waiting for 6 hours after our work session. Okay, I wanted to let you know that. All right, now moving into our superintendent search for the day. Once again, I'd like to introduce Dr. Bill Vogel and Mr. John Reichert, who are with us here today. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. And I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and we're pleased to be back in front of y'all again to kind of run through some of our items today. And as you mentioned, Dr. Vogel is with us as well, along with Ms. Messina, who's participating via Zoom in case there's any questions she might be asked during the presentations. Madam Chair, 4 or really 5 items just to touch on today. I'd like to again review the timeline just briefly. I know it's set and I think it's a workable timeline, a very good timeline, but I did want to just review some of the key points of that. After the timeline, I'd like for Dr. Vogel, if he would discuss some updates on the community forums and the staff forums and also the student forums that we've talked about previously, and also to discuss have a discussion about the online survey that we've talked about, and one's online survey for the community to respond to and one online survey for staff to respond to. And then just to talk briefly about your current school board policy that's in place on the hiring of superintendent, just a few quick comments about that. And then we're all very excited to see Rachel's presentation, Ms. Pleasant, kind of a first shot at our search portal superintendent search item, which she won't let anybody look at yet. We haven't seen it, so we're excited about that. So if I could, just move into the timeline, and hopefully you all have a copy of that. And again, today, September 29th, we'll review some of the items that I had just mentioned. Rachel is prepared for a press release on October 2nd. She and I have talked about that a couple of times over the past week. It will more or less kind of kick off the superintendent search. It will talk about the timeline, and we will take this timeline, Madam Chair, and I will change those times, and this timeline will be available on the search portal in case any members of your community or staff want to kind of get a feel for how the process and the timeline will work. Dr. Vogel will talk more in detail about the one item that is listed on the timeline is running from October 5th to November 5th. He has some scheduled dates for the community and staff forums. He's also going to talk about what he's worked with the Administrative Association, so I'll let him talk more in detail, but we do have some dates set. And I will certainly, once y'all kind of hear his presentation, you're comfortable with those dates, I can modify this timeline to put the specific dates in so the community would be aware of that as well. Our next time before you will be October 6th, where we have a board meeting to discuss, or a special work session to kind of finalize our online survey after Dr. Vogel addresses that today. We'll hopefully be able to review a draft of the search brochure, the electronic version at that time, and again, just again, a quick hit on the timeline in case there are any issues there. Then really on October the 12th, our online survey will go live for the community. It will run, and community and employees, it will run for basically a month from October 12th to November 12th. Then during the week of November 16th, we'll give staff, the IT staff, a little time to compile those results and present the results of the survey to board members. And then we move into the fall break November 23rd through the 22nd. On November 30th, we have again scheduled a special board work session to finalize the characters and qualities and characteristics from the survey and the community input that the board would like to put in the advertisement. We'll talk about some of the finer points of salary range to be posted, the length of contract that you'd advertise to offer, and the application process. And we're really preparing at that meeting to get ready to approve our ad that we will post for the vacancies. For the vacancy. We also will discuss what ad venues that the board would like to advertise in. Typically, it's top school jobs. We look at AASA, so there are some organizations and venues that we would recommend y'all consider advertising in, and we'll discuss that at that board meeting as well. Our ads then are scheduled to be posted on December the 4th. They will run through January the 31st, so that would give us about a 2-month advertisement period for the ads to be posted. In January, we'll have again a special board meeting to have the board appoint members of your Citizens Advisory Committee, or I'm sorry, your screening committee. I think that's how we're going to refer to it. So we'll have some discussion, a little more discussion about that at our October meeting, but just so you'll get a feel for what's coming in January to appoint those members of the advisory screening committee. Then we have a series of meetings with that screening committee. One will be an orientation session where we've talked about providing them with sunshine training, public records training, how the process will work. So that will be our first meeting on January the 21st. And then after the ads close on January the 31st, then we actually get into the meat of the screening committee doing their work over 2 meetings, February the 11th and February the 18th. So as you kind of look to prepare for identifying some community members to serve on this committee, these dates would be important for them to be aware of so they can make certainly those meetings. If you look at March the 16th, there's a special work session we have scheduled. That one is scheduled for 1 p.m. And we'll discuss at that point, should the board wish to identify semifinalists or just identify finalists from the group that comes from, the names that come from your screening committee. Assuming that, we just assume that the screening committee identifies 9 people for y'all to further consider. Would the board want to, at that point, say, we've looked at everything, we want to just identify our finalists? Or do you want to say, these are more or less semifinalists, we want to send them a series of questions to respond to, either written or via video, so you can get a better feel for that group that comes from your screening committee, and then you identify finalists after that. But it's something that certainly we can talk about in one of the previous work sessions before we get to that point. We then move to, depending on if the board wants semifinalists or just move right to finalists, we kind of address that again at March the 18th if the board does want semifinalists. And then the April 13th meeting is a meeting that we'll have to select the finalists, whether you agree to or approve semifinalists or not. That would be the meeting, April 13th, that you would really select the finalist to bring on site. And Madam Chair, if I could, the 3 dates that we have for finalist on-site interviews, April 21st, 22nd, 23rd, what I would like to do with the board's consensus is to simply change that to the week of April 19th. We're not quite sure yet what the board would like to do as far as having finalists come in, the number of days that might take. Again, the number of finalists that you identify may not be able to be completed over 3 days, depending on what the board really wants for their on-site interview process. So I would just like to simply change that so we can post it in our advertisements that on-site interviews will be held during the week of April the 19th. That way, the candidates who are looking at this position, they're going to know well in advance that they're going to have to set aside some time or that week, depending on how many finalists the board has and what the board decides as the finalist on-site interview process. And then April 26th would be our day to actually select the new superintendent, and then we move into contract negotiations. So again, with the board's permission, I'd just like to make that one change for the week of instead of those specific dates, and I will certainly update the time changes on these other 2 dates. And even if we set that week of the 19th and there's a conflict down the road, then we can adjust accordingly. Sure. So that, Madam Chair, is a quick review of our timeline. And thank you for all the work you did to and the board members to bring this together. At this point, if there are no questions, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Vogel, who will discuss the community staff forums and some of the work that he has done to date on getting those scheduled, and also the online survey.
Thank you very much. I'll go ahead and proceed. I believe the board members have received a draft of opportunities for community involvement, and thank you for your input. I'd like to go through this. The first item for community involvement is to host an online community and staff survey. Board members have received a copy of this survey. We've already received input from the board on the successes, challenges, and the qualities in our pre-search interview. These surveys are designed for the community and the staff to provide input. So the concept would be that out of each of the leadership categories, that the respondents would select 3. And there's also an opportunity on this survey for open-ended questions also. And we would be working with your staff through Mrs. Pleasant, and they would be hosted on the portal, so they would be easily accessible to the community or the staff. And then what we would do is we would ask the respondents to list their zip code, so that would help us identify which area of the county that the respondents were coming from, and then they could also check whether they were a parent, a school district employee, a student, or someone from the business community or others. So we would get some good information from this. So after this information is received, then we will take the qualities that the board identified and then those from the community. And then, as John said, on the calendar timeline, we would bring those all back, and then Mrs. Pleasant could incorporate those into the brochure. So we would have that done prior to that time. So that's the way those would work right there. If you have any questions about this survey, either the community survey or the student survey, what we would recommend is please give your suggestions to Mrs. Pleasant, and then on October 6th, we would go ahead and have this finalized, and then it would be posted October 12th. Both of these surveys would be posted. There would be links for both of those surveys. When I talked with some of the staff, they felt it was better to post it for the staff, because in case some staff member didn't have an email, they could go to a school to go ahead and fill it out. Okay? John. Next item. The next item would be, I'll continue on with the community input. The staff forums. We talked with the representatives from the AFSCME group and the Polk Educational Association. We talked there with Stephanie, and they thought that the 21st of October would be a real good opportunity to have an in-person staff forum. The reason they picked October 21st is because it's an early release day. And so people such as bus drivers who have late schedules might be able to attend. They also suggested that we have that at Winter Haven High School. So then after talking with others, we thought that the week of October 19th would be a good opportunity to have our staff forum and then also our community forum. So the dates that we would incorporate into the calendar, pending board okay, would be we'd have an October 19th community forum at 6 o'clock, and these would be on site. We'd have October 20th community forum on site. We'd have the one I mentioned, the staff forum on site on the 21st, and then another community forum on October 22nd. That would be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And we thought by having them all that week, it would be easier for Mrs. Pleasant to publicize. This is the week when community and staff all give input. So we have those, and then we'd have 3 locations. We'd have an east location in Haines City. We'd have a central location in Winter Haven, and we would have a west location right here at the Miles Center. I've talked to Mrs. Bird. She's going to decide which of those dates work for each of the facilities, and working with her on that, then we could pull those together. She thought she might even have that by Friday for us. So if that sounds good, we'll certainly revise this, but we felt that after hearing from the board the last meeting when the board members thought it would be good to have the 3 different regions, that would work out. 2 other forums that were suggested in our pre-search. One was the Administrative Association. So I've talked with the president. I talked with Cal Wyndham, and he has set aside October 12th, and I'm not sure exactly what forum that he would have, whether we would come here inside or on-site or however we would do it. But we have that tentatively set with him for October 12th, and we'll let them kind of decide what process they would use. And also, I know Mrs. Fields and other board members brought up having a student involvement. So I talked with Mrs. Bird this morning, and she's in the process of organizing her annual group of students which she meets with. So she is going to get that information together. We would have one from each of our 14 traditional schools plus some other students, and she would make sure the group was representative. And then we talked about doing that possibly by Zoom. We would coordinate that because the students are very adept with technology. We could have one of that forum with the students. So we're very pleased that we've made a lot of progress in that particular area. Yes, yes.
Yeah, at one of the meetings we had, I wasn't aware of the student forum that's already been created, and we were asked for students, and I contacted my high schools, and they've given names of students. Are they to be included in that?
What I would do is I recommend giving those names to Mrs. Bird.
Okay.
Because I'm not sure how many we're open to any number, but that would be kind of a decision on how many would best represent that particular school. So I would give those names to Mrs. Bird. That's what I recommend.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'd like to make a suggestion. You mentioned the ASBA group.
Yes.
Run by Kyle Wyndham. So my question is, if we have the 3 different community forums that week, couldn't they just attend one of those to not create a 5th meeting? I mean, there's 4.
Absolutely.
I would simply let them know that that exists and give them that option.
Okay, fine. That sounds good. I just wanted to respond to what the board thought. So what we could do with the administrative group then is encourage them to attend one of those meetings during that week. Or we could have it separate, whatever the board pleasure is.
Whatever. Go ahead, yeah, Ms. Reynolds?
I feel like giving them an I mean, it's a very different conversation, I think, what business leaders or what the community members expect. As if you're a principal, you have a very different relationship with the superintendent. So I do think it would be probably good for the search committee to kind of hear their thoughts as the administrators of all of our schools and how they interact with the superintendent and what they would be looking for, because it's a little bit different relationship, I think, much as our teachers, and which certainly they can attend the full community forums, but I do think encouraging them to attend one where it's just principals being able to talk a little bit more freely maybe than they would necessarily say instead of them, there's things that teachers probably wouldn't want to say in front of one of their students' parents about how things work in the district, but still giving them that opportunity, I think, just to have a closed
Fields?
setting.
I agree with Ms. Reynolds. I think that there needs to be a separate meeting for them, and if they can't make that meeting, then they can opt
Right.
for the others.
Attend the others.
But I think out of respect, we need to allow them to have their own platform.
Anyone else?
I agree. This is Sarah. I agree 110% with Ms. Reynolds in this field.
That's working. I agree that they certainly have a different interest that needs to be addressed. I think you could probably schedule them back to back on the same day somewhere. I mean, for the,
Could do that.
where does one meeting end and the others start? I also hear the point about having 5 different meetings during the week or whatever. We like to,
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay. Turn it back over to you then.
Okay, could you clarify, I think I heard that you would like a separate meeting would be okay for
Yes.
that group? Okay, and I'll try to work around their schedule then.
But was the idea to try to have it piggybacked on another one, like separately, like have it like the same day or have it on a separate day?
We could,
That's up to y'all. Sure,
okay.
sure.
We'd
You
be
can
happy to
that.
schedule. I'll try to see
Because
how.
you're in town, do like a 4 to 5:30
Okay.
or something, I don't know, and then ours start at 6 to
Right,
7:30, so
right.
is that what
Yeah.
you're?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just for the sake of convenience and
Great.
using the
Travel
facility.
and all of that.
Right.
That sounds good. We'll talk with them about what date works out well, and normally we have these at 6 o'clock, and then we could have this one at 4.
Maybe.
And then go right to that. We'd be happy to do that. I know this question came up the last time about board member involvement at these meetings, and board members are encouraged to come to welcome and introduce, and normally the board members, after they welcome the individuals that come, would leave at that point, but that's normally what's happened in the past, so however the board would like to do that. Okay, then,
Can we get clarity on that, please?
yes, ma'am. See what the board would like to do, yes.
Ms.
I just have a question.
Sure.
Will these be recorded, these meetings?
Yes, they can be, we haven't recorded them in the past, but we take minutes. We have a person there who takes minutes.
Okay.
And then what happens is, you get a complete report from everyone there. You'll get a list, and we do that, of what the strengths of the district are, the challenges, the qualities that the people desire. And then we also, because sometimes when we go to these meetings, we have something that comes up that needs it's a kind of an urgent thing that has to be taken care of, so that we'll refer that out. So the board members get a complete report on all of that.
So minutes, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Correct.
And Ms. Fields, go ahead, you had a question?
If my memory serves me correctly, I think Ms. Messina had recommended that we not attend these meetings. That's my memory.
Correct.
And I think that we kind of all said that we wouldn't. Maybe I didn't get it correctly.
That certainly is a consensus of the board on how the board would like it. We've had situations, and every one of our searches, the board members have never stayed throughout a meeting.
Right.
Sometimes the board members don't show up at all, sometimes they do.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Mr. Townsend.
yeah, I mean, what I remembered saying was introducing it, hi, welcome everybody, here's what we're doing, bye. Like,
Correct.
that's what I thought we decided on last week. Is that what everybody else remembered, other than Ms. Fields? Do you not remember that?
Just for the record, for whatever it's worth, I won't be attending any of the meetings because I don't think that we should have a presence. So that's just my take. Everybody can do their own thing, but I just want to make sure everybody understands mine.
What's the
And
pleasure
if
of
you
the
do
board?
that, if it's more than one person, it has to be noticed. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
assuming that there's more than one board member present at a meeting
Yep.
such as that, then you would need to notice it. But if what Mr. Townsend said.
What I
here-
thought was the consensus was that the board whose district it was would just introduce it and say, I'm leaving now, you guys have fun. Like, I mean,
Okay.
that was.
I don't see that as being
It doesn't matter to
yeah,
me, but,
problematic.
I think it would be like another similar community group where you're greeting constituents and then you're not staying for business or, for discussion. So there wouldn't be any kind of board or sunshine violation at that point.
I would have to agree. And once we determine where and how, we can reach out to that board member and see if they'd be available on the particular night. So like if on my night I can't go, then I would reach out to one of you to see if somebody could cover. But I do think it's professional that one of us be there and actually welcome the group and say thank you for coming and whatever, and then say thanks and, I'm going to exit now, make it very clear you're not hanging around, you're not listening. We're going to be leaving now, and I hope you all take the time to give the input that we need as we move forward.
And Madam Chair, I don't know that my district, because the rural sector would be in any of these locations, but I would like to be included just so I can greet the constituents that have asked me about them. Thank you.
Okay? Yes, sir.
All of these meetings would be publicly noticed, so that would not be a particular problem at all. And sometimes we've had more than one board member show up, and they've been able to have more than one board member welcome. Normally, our protocol, the meetings will take about 1 hour. We don't take a lot of time. And then normally there's water provided and maybe a snack, but if snacks are provided, they're all sealed up, so we meet all the COVID guidelines. And then if there's some extra at one session, they can be moved to the other. And we would coordinate through Mrs. Bird and Mr. Pleasant to make sure the schools are available. We would usually have them in the cafeteria or in the media center. And depending on how many people show up, we have ways we can get that input. And board members would have all that input. So I think it's worked out very well in the past on that. So that's what we
So
haven't
let me
done.
summarize then,
Okay.
because we had two different
Got it.
thoughts. One, nobody goes, one person goes, and now we've said anybody can go. So if we're going to duly notice them,
I
can,
would recommend, of course, this is not rocket science, we don't need to reinvent the wheel here.
yes,
But, I mean, I think if a board member wanted to show up to introduce, give salutations, and then hand it off like you've suggested, Madam Chair, or as Board Member Townsend, fine.
okay.
But I don't think you should get more into it than that.
Okay, so one board member, is that consensus, that we'll have one board member, and then we'll figure out whose schedule is available to do which location? Does that seem reasonable? Okay. All right, thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Vogel.
Thank you for that clarification. Item number 5 is the impaneling of a superintendent search citizen screening committee. And I'm going to have John just make a comment on that. I know he's already talked a little bit about the date that we need to have that done. But John, why don't you talk a little bit more about that?
Thank you, Dr. Vogel. Yes, again, as we touched on, January the 12th is a meeting to appoint that committee, and we can certainly have discussions about the potential membership at a prior workshop. But typically what school boards do, in this case with your 7 members, the board might decide that there are, and I'm just picking a number, there are 10 organizations that each of you feel must be represented. If it is a certain chamber, if it's the PTA, there's an organization that y'all feel must be on this screening committee, then you would contact that organization and ask them to have a member identified to serve on this committee, to where the organization kind of identifies the committee member. With that, and if you pick 10 organizations, that would be 10 of your members, and then maybe each board member just selects 2 other individuals to serve on the committee. That would be 14. That would give you a 24-member committee. Other boards have simply said that each board member is going to select individuals to be on this committee. So if you have 7 board members, you wanted 4 each, that's 28. So it's really the board's option of how you identify this screening committee by starting off with a certain number of organizations that you want a representative from, and then the board adds a member or 2 that they would just select themselves. And whether that be a student, whether it be an employee, whether it be a citizens, member, that's certainly the board's call on how you want to develop this screening committee or identify the members of the screening committee.
Are you wanting us to discuss that now and give you input today?
No, ma'am, no, ma'am.
Okay.
Just be thinking over any input you have, but
Okay.
just be thinking about the method that you might like to do that, because we don't really identify specifically and formally approve that committee until January the 12th. And at that board meeting where you approve them formally, then they immediately come under sunshine and public records, and we have to kind of, get them prepared to move forward with their work. But we'll have time for a couple of discussions about the membership prior to that January 12th evening. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to say that I've already been getting calls from people wanting to serve, and for some unknown reason, the number 7 has come up. I think people in the community think that each of us will have an opportunity to submit 7 names. So I just want to make sure that it's understood that we don't know, and I say we have not made a decision on how many people will be serving in that capacity. And my other question, and today might not be the answer, today for the answer is, what is the maximum amount of people that you all feel would serve well on that committee?
Ms. Fields, we've had anywhere from, I think, 18 up to like 37. We really are flexible with the number, and honestly, because these folks that you're going to identify, they're professional people. They understand the work they're going to do. We've just not had a problem dealing with 37 or 38 or 15 or 16. And depending on what guidelines we may be living under at that point, do we meet individually or in person with that entire group, say here? We've done it that way. We've also had it flow very smoothly with Zoom-type meetings to conduct the training and the follow-up meetings where they do their work. So the numbers are flexible with us.
Thank you.
Ms. Reynolds?
I know you had mentioned this before, so I had kind of started making a list of, when we look at this committee, who needs to be represented. So as we're looking at it, my vote would definitely be to make sure some of our county-wide organizations have a seat at the table. And that doesn't fall to, okay, which 7 of us are going to make sure the PEA is represented? Which of the 7 of us are going to make sure that AFSCME's there? Polk Vision, Sheriff's Department, places like that. So my vote would definitely be to have our set, these are the organizations we need to make represented, and then do additional.
Yeah.
So I don't know when, we probably need to sooner rather than later determine how many, who those people are and how many, just so that we're not the week before Christmas asking them if they're willing to serve.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Reynolds, and that is a good idea. If you and you might identify 15 organizations, then that would, to Ms. Fields' point, may limit the board then to only identify 2 or 3 people. So, and I'll make a note to kind of bring this back for a little additional discussion in October.
In looking at my notes, as we talked previous time, we talked about looking at exactly what you've said, our chamber professionals, business community, so on and so forth, and then after those are taken care of, then each board member would then appoint, 3 or 4 additional folks from their community or however you want to look at it. So, and that each of us would provide a list of groups that we all felt, like you said, would need to be included. So for example, yes, PEA, AFSCME, ASBA, the chambers, LEDC, whatever. So if everybody can, I think that's where we need to start, because we're going to all have duplicates, because we all know who our community, some of the community groups we need to include. So we could start that if everybody wanted to, maybe be thinking and provide a list. When should we have that decided? Because I've already received 3 phone calls of folks that want to be on the screening committee.
Right. Madam Chair, I would feel it's appropriate, even at the October 6th meeting, and I've made a note when we come back,
Yes.
that we could at least identify the groups, but I would advise staying away from identifying the specific individual
Yes.
Because we don't want to kind of cloud sunshine that, well, we think that's going to be a committee member, so he or she is under sunshine, but nothing's really official until the board approves it specifically.
Okay.
But I think we could work to identify, we will ask for some representative from these 12 or 13 organizations, and we can kind of get our first draft list at the October 6th meeting, if you would like.
Yeah, that would be great. Is everyone have the time this week to do that? To provide a list, let's say to Susan by Friday of this week? Let's say by 5 o'clock on Friday, because we meet next Tuesday the 6th. So if everybody could put together a list of organizations, not people right now, just the organizations that we want represented on this citizens
Yes, ma'am.
screening committee. And then if we could provide that to Susan, then Ms. Warpington, then she could compile that list, and we could have that ready to present to you. And then once you review that, you could then come back to us and then say, in addition to these community groups, each of you can appoint X amount based on numbers. Does that sound like a way to proceed? Okay, Ms. Miller?
I think that, and we've talked about this in the past, and I think that will be the best way to go. I think where people have gotten the idea is 3 to 5 was mentioned. You know, everybody would have 3 to 5, so that's when I started getting phone calls, who are your, selections going to be? But I think it's important because there are agencies that I work with countywide that do not live in my district. So if I had to appoint them as one of my people, it would take away from somebody representing District 7. So I think it's good that we make a list and try to just find, those. And then I would like a minimum of 3 to 4. If that's too many to go 5 plus agencies. That way, for us that have, my district involves 3 cities, actually. And so I would want to make sure they're all represented. So I like that, the fact that we're working on this early, that will help me. Thank you.
Okay, to summarize, then, let's see, we have a comment from Ms. Fortney.
Yes, thank you. When I just want to clarify, when we're talking like a chamber representative, we're not talking one from Haines City, one from Lakeland, one from Winter Haven, correct? And then my second follow-up is, I'm kind of in the same boat as Ms. Miller.
We're unable to hear Ms. Fortney's comments.
Let me try again. Is that better?
It's on her end. Okay, in the meantime, Mr. Wilson?
I thought we'd already submitted the list of organizations. Did we not do that already? Okay.
No, we just
Did
talked
you-
about it.
You have mine? Okay.
Okay, he's ahead of the game, yay. Okay, so everybody agrees by Friday, October 2nd, you'll provide a list of the organizations throughout the county and otherwise that you would like to see represented on our Citizens Screening Committee. All right, awesome.
Thank you. And that'll help with Susan, because then she'll find the commonalities too.
Yes.
So we can kind of narrow those down. Excellent. 2 other considerations when you're thinking about your committee. One would be, do you want to have active employees on the committee or not? So that's something to also be thinking about too. Whether some boards have some active people on the committee. Others would have some retired people, maybe like a retired teacher of the year. That's a consideration that you would have to think about. And another would be, do you want a student on the committee too? And those don't have to be decided upon right now, but those, for your thinking, you should think about that for next time. Okay, the next, we have number 6 on our list is a community reception to meet the finalists. And based on what some things you've done in the past, John has expanded the window of the process for interviewing the finalists. And so we don't have to decide this right now, but in the past, before COVID, we've had a community reception that brought all of the finalists together with members from the community. We've had anywhere from 150 to 250 people attend these events. We just had a single one. Because of the size of your county and your desire to involve constituents, we may want to change that model. Recently, because of COVID, we have had online community forums. where Mrs. Messina has interviewed all of the finalists. Some of you may have seen some of those interviews in some of the previous searches we've done. We did that in Martin County, we did that in Sarasota County, we did that in Escambia County. We actually had more participants by doing it online. What would happen during the days of the interviews, when the candidates were being interviewed by the board, people would have an opportunity to submit questions on the district website to Mrs. Messina. And she would take all of those questions, and then some of them were for all the candidates, some were for individual. And then she had, and you have Polk TV, she had an event that night, and then all those questions were asked. The viewership on those events was amazing. I think we ended up having about 1,600 in Sarasota view this, which was far more than we've ever had at a community reception. So this is another thing that we are very flexible doing, and we can do that in a number of ways. And as we get further through the process, we'll have further conversations about that too. So the reason we're bringing up the Superintendent Search Citizen Screening Committee and this right now are for board members to think about how they would like us to proceed. So that's something that's also for a future meeting, but we do want the board members to be thinking about that. And certainly, the final one, board members, I know this is a very active board in the communities that you serve, so you'll be hearing a lot of input from individuals. So that summarizes community involvement, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to redraft this for you for your website portal, and I'm going to, if there are no further questions, I'm going to turn it back to John. Yes.
Sorry, mine actually was on number 1, but I didn't realize we were doing questions as we went.
Sure.
For the online and staff surveys,
Yeah.
you mentioned having checkboxes for relation to the district, or having them select their relation to the district,
Yes.
but it's not actually written in here, so I just wanted to make sure the relation to the district was checkboxes.
Yes.
As we have several that are a community member, a business leader, but they're also a parent. So
Yes.
just making sure that if they're a teacher and a parent, that they can let us know. That
Yes, they will do
they
that.
are
We'll
both.
work with your IT folks, and when you see the completed survey on October 6th, those will be on there.
Okay.
And we usually have it so they can check more than one box, I believe. Fine.
Perfect.
Right,
Awesome. Thank you.
great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay.
Also on this survey, one thing that struck me was asking for 3 traits out of like 20
Right.
is, I just was curious if we wanted to, if it's a problem to ask for a few more, to like, it's like, would 6 be better or 7? It just seems like there are a lot of important traits there that are being squeezed out because you have to pick 3 as opposed to, so just logistically, I was curious what people thought about that.
That would be a preference of the board.
It does seem like a lot. I mean, I can hear already. I have more than 3 out of, if you're going to ask me, out of that many, so either condense what we're letting them choose from or give them more options to choose, to pick.
We're fine, we could go at 5.
Yeah, I don't think you would want more than 5. I
Right.
think 5,
Okay?
right? Think about it. I mean, because top 5, but then does that change the 3 questions at the end? No, we would leave those
No,
the
those,
same.
the open-ended.
Okay.
And what will happen is, usually, the IT department will actually have those listed. They'll be able to come out loud and clear what are the top choices, so 5 would be fine. And then we've tried to condense this list, but it's pretty hard to condense it because of the areas. And we've tried to list the different areas, which are typically areas that the board has priorities on. So, okay, we'll change it to 5. Thank you for that suggestion.
All right, so that's
Yeah, no,
consensus of the board?
I don't want to condense. I mean, those are a
Yeah.
lot of important
We're
traits.
we're not condensing, right? We're just
Right.
gonna go at 5.
No,
Correct.
we're just going to pick 5 instead of 3.
Excellent.
Ms. Fortney has her hand up? I think.
Yes, thank you. I have to go back, I'm sorry. I'm just curious, when we talk about identifying groups, we're not talking about like.
Okay,
the
we're not
Chamber of
able to
Commerce
hear you
from
out
Winter Haven.
here in the boardroom. So I'm sorry for the technical. Go ahead. Try again, Ms. Fortney. Okay, in the meantime, let's proceed.
Fine. Thank you. John?
So make a note that we're going to change, we're not condensing the list, we're simply going to
going to
ask,
five.
instead of 3, we're going to ask for 5.
Excellent.
Top 5, okay.
Sounds good.
Yes, ma'am.
Just trying to make sure.
Sure.
Thank you, Dr. Vogel.
The last one was me. Never mind.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Fortney, we can hear you now.
Well, yeah, now my internet dropped. Anyways, I have the same problem as Ms. Miller with people that I know all over this district. I need some guidance. Do I just pick from my district, or can it be from my groups that I'm involved in other people's districts? And I really am strongly leaning toward five selections per board member. That's it.
I think what we talked about was, a few minutes ago, that each of us would provide a list of organizations that we felt was imperative to have them represented at the table for the screening committee. And then once we looked at those numbers, we would come back and say, okay, now we have X amount that we've all submitted, and that number is X or Y. Based on that number, how many do we want to do per board member? So we're not making that decision today.
I understand. I just wanted to voice my concern. But my first question still stands. When I send my list, do I include Haines City Chamber?
Yeah, sure. Sure, yeah. You include everybody, and then if I send it and Ms. Miller sends it, Susan will go, wait, I got 3 Haines City Chambers, that's just one organization. And then she goes to the next one. Because we're going to have duplicates, certainly. But if you feel that it's important, you need to put it down regardless of where it is in the county. Am I right? That's how I understood this.
Okay.
Any organizations.
Wouldn't chamber be one thing, not individual? That's all I'm saying.
No, I don't think so. No, no, ma'am, because there's 17 municipalities in Polk County, and thus numerous chambers that go with each one. I think you write down the ones that you feel are critical, yes, and then we'll have to figure it out.
Or none of them. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Reichert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The last item, just a little commentary about, we recognize that y'all do have a school board policy, Policy 1020, that talks about the employment of superintendent, and we just simply, as a kind of cautionary recommendation, to maybe have legal counsel review that. I know that Mr. Bridges might have had a conversation with Ms. Messina about that, just to make sure that our policy is in compliance, or we're in compliance with the policy, should it have any issues that address the hiring of the superintendent that we need to be aware of, or the district needs to be aware of, and also if there's any need to update the current job description of the superintendent, to bring that up to date. It's something that we certainly have, months to do that, but just as a comment to have those 2 items reviewed. And we certainly can follow up with Mr. Bridges or legal counsel just to see if there's any issues we need to be aware of.
And I'm, as you know, obviously, I'm just filling in for Mr. Bridges today, but he'll be back. For the October 6th, what are you asking that? Have you had the conversation with him or not?
I believe Ms. Messina has already spoken with him, and it's nothing we need to really talk about at October 6th, but we'll just make sure we follow up with Mr. Bridges.
Great.
And just as a point of clarification, we did get a copy of the school board from the policy manual dated June 3rd, 2020, as we were beginning this process from Mr. Bridges.
Great.
Outlining the employment of the superintendent and basically what we have in policy. Okay. So we have that.
Okay,
Yes,
perfect.
and I believe he sent it out to the board. If you didn't receive one, I'll make sure you get one as we move forward.
Great.
I just have a quick question. I know this was adopted in 2013, and we've done policy updates through Neola and other services. So if this is a time to look at it to make sure it's updated, I'd rather do that now than later.
Okay, so if you would like to, if you want to review it, and if you have any comments or suggestions, and then we can bring it before the board at one of our work sessions, we can do that. What's the consensus of the board?
Would there be any updates from the people that we contract to review policy? Do we know if there's any updates from that group?
There is not as of
Okay.
now, because if it would have been updated in our policy manual, and then he would have sent us the most updated copy in June. So I'm going to say no, this is the most updated copy that we received.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Dr. Vogel?
Just to comment on that, Ms. Miller, some school boards have policies and others do not have a policy and just rely on the statute.
Okay.
So it's purely
Yeah.
a matter, but we always want to make sure as we move forward that we're not moving forward, or the board is not moving forward, that something would be contrary to your policy.
And as a note to that, at the end of our policy, the Florida statute is identified. So if anybody did want to look it up, they could certainly do so. Ms. Reynolds?
I just wanted to comment that if we are going to update it, we need to have it by our meeting next week, just because we have to let it sit for so long. If we want to have it changed before we advertise for the position, if there's anything in it that needs to be changed, because it has to sit for 30 days, is that correct? So if we want to do it by the November meeting, then we would need to hear it October 6th meeting before we. So.
Is anybody looking to make any changes? I didn't really see anything in the policy that would need to be updated, personally. Now, when you're talking about job description, that's a different place. But I think this is pretty encompassing. But what's the pleasure of the board? Ms. Miller?
No, I appreciate the information you've given us. I didn't realize that some people just go by statute. So I'd like to review other districts, but right now I don't see that there needs to be a change. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much
right.
for bringing that up. Go ahead, Mr.
Okay.
Riker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our last item, and probably the most exciting today, will be our website update. Ms. Pleasant, please.
Yay. And let me just say while she's coming up that Ms. Pleasant and her team have done a phenomenal job and have spent countless hours putting this together. And I haven't seen it either yet, but I know it's very exciting, and I can't wait for everybody to see it.
Okay, thank you everyone for having me here today. So my team and I have been working for several weeks at least on this project, and beyond just a website portal, we have developed a campaign. We want to draw attention to the search process, and we want to help you engage the community, and we want to have this search process really, thank you, have it embody our brand. We are, we say that we put students first, and we want to show that to potential candidates who are considering applying for this position from the outset. We also know that there are several of these searches that have been conducted in the state just in recent months. You've named several, and we want to stand out. We want ours to look different. We want ours to be exciting. We want to help attract the most highest quality candidates possible to this position. And so we have developed a campaign. We're calling it the Student Super Sleuth campaign, and I will give you a look at our website now. But someone earlier mentioned involving students in the search, and we're doing that through, we have recruited a team of students who will be involved in the search process. I'll introduce you to them now. There is Allison Bensis. She is a student at Ridge Community High School. This year she's taking part in e-school, and she said that she is looking for a superintendent who will listen to the students and get to know them. We have Tyler Mercier. He deferred his diploma from Doris A. Sanders Learning Center, and he's now studying in the transition program. So he is looking for a superintendent who is going to advocate for students with special needs. We have Alessandro Mejia. He attends Harrison School for the Arts, and he wants to one day be a professional performer. He's looking for a superintendent who will promote and protect arts education. And then we have Trenton Holmes, who is a student at Davenport School of the Arts. He's a 7th grader, and I wanted to actually read a direct quote from him to you about what he's looking for in his next superintendent. We need someone who can see that people come from different backgrounds and learn in different ways. We need a team player who can help us all keep us all safe. So that was actually what Trenton said about what he's looking for in his next superintendent. These student super sleuths will be conducting their own search for clues that will lead us to our next superintendent, and they will be led by our junior superintendent. This is Bryn Smith. She attends Carlton Palmore Elementary, and you may remember she was the star of our census promotion video earlier this year, and she also participated in last year's Teacher of the Year event. So we, in addition to the elements that we will put on the website, today you've approved a timeline. I guess there'll be some revisions made. We will post the timeline here. We will, as we issue news releases and announcements about the various events, we'll have those populated here. We also have the video player for every time there's a video discussion. We'll have that, we'll post that on the website. But in addition to the elements that we will post with guidance from the FSBA, in the PR office, we are going to create, we're going to use our team of students to create original content that will help engage the community and invite them to participate. For instance, videos to promote those community forums, utilizing these students, videos starring these students, encouraging the public to take the surveys. And ideally, these students would even interview those finalists when we get to that point, and we could create content that would live on this website. So we hope to amplify what you're doing, what the FSBA is helping us do, and really stand out above all the noise. There's a lot going on in our community right now with the pandemic and everything that comes with that. So we wanted to stand out in a way that leverages our students. So that's what we're doing in PR.
That is awesome. Yay, give them a round of applause. Woo. Well, we really thank you for that great presentation and look forward to seeing the children and all the fun things that they can do. We have some great actors and actresses, and like you said, what better way to promote Polk County Public Schools than to put forth some of our children and what they believe in and what they stand for. So I think that's great. Ms. Reynolds?
Rachel, what is the website? Is it active now?
It'll go live on October 2nd.
Okay.
That was the date on the timeline.
Okay.
And it'll be placed on as the homepage
The homepage,
banner.
okay.
Yeah.
It's not separate. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Anyone else? Ms. Fortney?
Thank you. Rachel, this is reminiscent of the new branding logo idea. I appreciate your team.
Yes. Oh, yes, yes. Thank you for mentioning that. I just wanted to make a special note. We did do the branding competition a couple years ago that resulted in our new logo and slogan. And one of the students who participated in that process was Jordan Garcia, who attends Lake Region, or graduated Lake Region High School, and now he works in the PR office, and he is the creative force behind the graphic you saw a few minutes ago. So he and himself embodies students first.
It's just awesome. I love the whole idea. It makes me want to go back to being a teacher. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fortney. Anyone? All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're done, and
Okay.
the video gave me some chills.
Yay! So exciting.
Excellent.
So
Yes.
I just want to say thank you to the board members. I appreciate everyone being here today. Did you have a comment, Ms. Miller?
I was looking at some previous, there was an update to our policy in September, and we're going to review it. It looks like October we'll finalize that policy, so there's already been an update
To it.
to it.
Okay,
Thank you.
wonderful. Thank you so much for finding that. I appreciate it. Anyone else? Yes, Ms. Fields?
I want to go back to the community survey questionnaire. There's a lot of information here, and I might have overlooked it. Is there anything that references having someone who has a leadership skills in turnaround schools? Is there somewhere? Is that on here anywhere? Because I didn't see it, but doesn't mean that it's not there.
We can add that.
Okay. Thank you.
And if there's any other items that may have been missed, if you could just mention to Mrs. Pleasant or just email us and we can go ahead and update it. Because what we'll do is we'll go ahead and do that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Fields.
Thanks, Ms. Fields.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? Just want to thank all the board members for coming today in person to our meeting. We appreciate that. And thank you to Dr. Vogel and Mr. Reichert for being able to join us today. And I guess our next meeting is scheduled for next Tuesday, not for superintendent search, certainly, but for our next work session. So board members, until further notice, this meeting is adjourned, and we'll see you next Tuesday, October the 6th, right back here for our work session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's at 1. I gotta look.